Choosing what to watch.
Night after night.
The flicking through.
The endless searching. It's a nightmare.
We want to help you.
On our brand new podcast, Off the Telly, we share what we've been watching. Gladiators.
Loads of games, loads of fun, loads of screaming. Lovely.
Off the Telly with me, Joanna Page.
And me, Natalie Cassidy. So your evenings can be a little less searching.
And a lot more watching.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the news, views and analysis you need. It's Friday the 12th of April. I'm Kenny Crawford and we'll be taking a look ahead to a busy weekend across the SPFL. Rangers boss Philippe Clement is staring at the possibility of Celtic going 4 points clear on Saturday, but he's not letting recent Dens Park pitch issues fluster him.
I'm not somebody who wants to have excuses if we need to change plans. We always adapt to the situation.
Meanwhile, there's a tussle for the last top six spot between Dundee, Hibs and Motherwell.
We know that we're playing at 3 o'clock on Saturday. We know we're playing against Hibs. We know it's at Firth Park and we know we need to win the game, so that's pretty clear. And that's exactly how we'll be bracing ourselves for the lead up to the game.
And
Goal! Kilmarnock are ahead 1-0.
Can Kilmarnock take another step towards wrapping up fourth place?
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Well, I'm pleased to say that part of our gang today is former Killie, Rangers and Dundee United goalkeeper Cammy Bell and man of many talents at BBC Sports Scotland, Thomas Duncan. Cammy, how are you?
Morning, Kenny. Yeah, all good.
Have you had a hearty breakfast to fuel you for 20 minutes of podcasting?
I've got a coffee at the ready, Kenny, so I'm all good.
Good stuff. Thomas, are you in fine fettle this Friday?
Yeah, absolutely. Excited, Kenny. Big weekend ahead, so like Cammy, fueled by caffeine, ready to go.
Okay, the butler has provided you with that, Thomas, yeah?
Always.
Right, we've got a lot of previewing to get through with Cammy and Thomas, but first, here's a wee selection of the latest Scottish football headlines. Rangers manager Philippe Clement says the club offered to play their twice-postponed game against Dundee yesterday and joked they'll play the match on Mars if need be. Former Netflix Vice President Eric Barmack says he and his wife are keen to invest in Motherwell because it's a club with deep local roots and a very passionate community. It was a tough night in the Europa League quarter-finals for Scotland captain Andy Robertson's Liverpool, who lost their first leg 3-0 at home to Atalanta. Robertson played the second half. Better fortunes, though, for John McGinn at the same stage of the Europa Conference League. He scored as Aston Villa beat Lille 2-1.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
OK, let's get stuck into the discussion and begin with the Premiership title race. Celtic 1 point ahead of Rangers, but because the Ibrox side didn't get that game at Dens Park played, Celtic now have the chance to move 4 clear if they beat St Mirren, with Rangers not facing Ross County in Dingwall until Sunday. How significant, Cammy, is it that Celtic could build that lead?
Yeah, listen, it will be significant, but again, Rangers, as Philippe Clement has said, they take it game by game. They can only win the games ahead of themselves. It's not been ideal this week with the postponement again of the game against Dundee. They would have liked to have that one wrapped up and played by now. It's not happened, so they just need to deal with that. They just need to focus on this game on Sunday against Ross County, which is going to be a really difficult tie. It's a game that Ross County are fighting for their lives at the moment. It's up in Dingwall, so that throws its own problems as well. So yeah, there's challenges ahead for Rangers certainly, but it's ones that I'm pretty sure the squad can handle.
And the thing is, Thomas, we're saying that Celtic could build that 4-point lead, but St Mirren will have something to say about that because they've got plenty to play for themselves at Celtic Park.
Yeah, of course, we know how tricky opponents St Mirren can be. There, they'll get behind the ball, they'll defend well, which they often do, although they've lost 3 times to Celtic already this season, although once it did take a late goal by O at Celtic Park the last time. But I think Celtic are probably a different proposition now with their players back. I think Carter Vickers coming back in, Hatate, McGregor as well, obviously coming off the bench against Rangers last week. I just think that raises the level of the Celtic starting 11 significantly. So I do expect them, especially at home, with probably a big raucous crowd behind them, given that we're into the final throes of the title race now. I would expect them to get the job done for sure, particularly with those players back.
Cammy, as you alluded to, it's a tricky 8 days coming up for Philippe Clement and Rangers. Ross County on Sunday, Dundee on Wednesday, hopefully, somewhere, even if it's not Dens Park. Scottish Cup semi-final against Hearts a week on Sunday. Let's hear what the Belgian's been saying about things.
No excuses around that. If I see things that are not normal, I speak about it. But I will always adapt to win games with my team. They're super motivated and they want to do something special. So it's always the case, and we have respect for every opponent. They played a good game at Ibrox also. So we know we need to play a really good game to get the 3 points. So we're focused on that now.
OK, Cammy, we heard Philippe Clement there. He's going to adapt to whatever conditions are thrown at him in terms of fixtures and when they're played and the tight run of fixtures they've got over the next week. Do you expect that to be 3 wins for Rangers in those 3 games?
Yeah, I do, Kenny, to be honest. I really do. I feel as if it's the business end of the season. It's so important. And these guys at Rangers and Celtic know how important these games are building up towards the end of the season. There's no wriggle room for slip-ups at this moment in time. So I expect them to go to Ross County. It'll be a difficult game, but I fully expect them to take 3 points. And then wherever and whenever the Dundee game happens, hopefully it is at Dens Park on Wednesday night next week, they will take 3 points from there again. They're going to be difficult games, but I fully believe they've got the squad there. They've got the mentality as well within the squad. That's one of the big things for me. They've got a winning mentality now that Philippe Clement demands. And yeah, I expect 3 wins within the next week.
Thomas, you alluded to Celtic getting a lot of key players back. When you watch Brendan Rodgers celebrate those goals in the Old Firm derby, it looked as if he was right into things. Do you think he's really relishing this tussle for the title?
It's a good question. I don't know whether you'd prefer to be 10 points clear or not. You probably would at this stage of the season. But look, he's not been involved in a title race like this up here in Scotland, because when he was up here previously, they did canter to the league most seasons. But we know he's a hugely experienced manager, won the FA Cup down in England, went very close to a title with Liverpool in the Premier League, of course. So he knows what he's doing. Brendan Rodgers is always very calm. Obviously you're saying he was celebrating in such a big game last week, but mostly he doesn't give too much away. And I think the message will just be the same for both managers. I think it's just concentrate on ourselves. And Celtic in particular have been over the course so many times and done so successfully. Obviously both teams can still say it's in their hands with an Old Firm game to come as well at Celtic Park. It'll be really interesting to see when that pops up in the post-split fixtures, of course. So I think the message from both camps will be the same: concentrate on ourselves, and then when it comes to that matchup, that could be, or probably will be, defining in terms of the destination of the title. But I do say that Celtic are unbeaten in the Old Firms this season, and yet they're potentially going to be playing catch-up by the time that game arrives if Rangers beat Dundee. So there is always the possibility for an unknown slip-up. We saw Rangers lose at home to Motherwell a few weeks ago. So always on paper it looks as though you say, well, they're all going to win the rest of their games and it'll come down to that Old Firm game at Celtic Park. But there's often a wee twist in the tail. So we'll just wait and see. But it's fascinating, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Cammy, although you're an ex-Rangers goalkeeper and your leanings will be that way, are you still enjoying the fact that it's a live title race as we go into this closing stage of the season?
Yeah, it's brilliant, Kenny. It's brilliant for Scottish football, and again, the attention that it's going to get. And it's only going to build from here on in. It's going to get bigger and bigger. As Thomas said, the Old Firm game coming up in the split, but then you've got big games that the Old Firm will have to go to Tynecastle, have to go to Rugby Park, which is such a difficult place to go these days. So, yeah, there will be twists and turns. There'll be difficult games, but it's great for Scottish football.
OK, we've chatted a bit about the Old Firm teams there. Let's move on to that 3-way battle for the last remaining top 6 spot. As things stand, Dundee 6th place on 39 points, Hibs 7th place, 38 points, and Motherwell in 8th place on 36 points. On Saturday, it's Aberdeen versus Dundee at Pittodrie, and it's Motherwell against Hibs at Fir Park. Cammy, that is a brilliant tussle at Fir Park. Who's favourite there, would you say?
Yeah, it's a brilliant tussle. It's a difficult one to call. Again, two teams that are a little bit inconsistent. I probably fancy Motherwell, to be honest. I think Hibs are in a sticky place at the moment. That result last weekend has been really damaging for them. They lost at home to St Johnstone. So yeah, I fancy Motherwell to try and get something from the game. Again, they're going into the game knowing they need to win the game. They absolutely need to win the game. Hibs could look at it as a draw maybe would get them into the top six. So I just feel as if Motherwell have got this spirit behind them at the moment. They've got a real team morale going, and Theo Bair up front's a real handful. And I think the problem for Hibs this season has been their defence. They look a little bit soft, they look a little bit weak. So I fancy Motherwell to take 3 points from that one.
And Thomas, you still get the sense that Nick Montgomery's got a lot of fans to win over completely at Easter Road. He'll be at Fir Park this Saturday. Getting the top six spot would go a long way to helping that, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, Kenny. I just think for him, I know it's only one position in the league, but it would just be massive if they were to get into the top six, because I think, not that you could then write off the rest of the season. You want to do as well as you can and push for Europe, but it kind of takes the pressure off a bit. If they're in there in the bottom six, it just feels everything just goes completely flat. There's not much left to play for. They're not going to go down, but everything just kind of takes a sting out of the rest of the season, I think. And as you say, there's no doubt for me they have improved since January, but ultimately, when you lose at home to St Johnstone, a St Johnstone team who weren't going well, don't score many goals, you concede twice. I think any momentum or progress that people are seeing, that just plants a massive seed of doubt in everyone's mind. So for Hibs not to make the top six, it's not a disaster. I don't think people will be saying, the manager needs sacked or anything like that, because I think he needs time to build, and we've seen with one window that he's managed to improve things slightly. So it's not like a complete and utter disaster, as I say, but I do think just for everyone's confidence in the manager and the direction of the squad, it would be huge if they were to get the job done. But of course, it's out their hands really, because if Dundee do the business, then it's all over.
Stuart Kettlewell, as Cammy touched on, he's done a great job of giving the Steelmen hope of a top half finish. Let's hear what he's been saying.
But in terms of one game to give yourself a chance to get into the top six, then there was a stage where I would have bitten your hand off for that, and I'm sure most Motherwell supporters and most people associated with this club would be the same. We've had a real tough run of results, but in large chunks to get into this position we've had to have been good. There's been a lot of progress and development with individuals, which is something that's massive to me in the football club, but we've always had that tendency to be in games of football, even at times if that's a late rally like it was at the weekend past, but we've always had that kind of character, and that aspect of this cause means a lot to us. It's a game to look forward to. It's against a very good side in my opinion. I watched the way that Nick Montgomery's been able to tweak and change things at Hibs, but in my opinion they're a good side, and I think they're getting better as well. The only outcome that we've got a chance in is by trying to win a game of football, so from my side of it, I think it's really simple and it's really clear.
OK guys, before we move off the Motherwell Hibs game, I want to test you with a question. Do either of you remember what happened on the 5th of May 2010 concerning Motherwell and Hibs?
Was that the 6-6 draw, Kenny?
Oh, Thomas. Early in the morning, yet you're on fire.
It's the only Motherwell Hibs trivia I've got, so...
Yeah. So we've got Motherwell 6, Hibs 6, Giles Coke with a couple, Tom Haitley got one, John Sutton, Lucas Jutkiewicz, that spectacular volleyed from such a tight angle. As for Hibs, Colin Nish got a hat-trick. There was Derek Riordan, and Anthony Stokes got a couple as well. What a match that was, and I think we'd take that, Cammy, on Saturday again.
Yeah, listen, we would absolutely take that as a neutral. I'm pretty sure that I think both teams going into that need the win. But listen, what a game that was. It was an absolute classic. And it's one that will always be remembered in Scottish football with such a high-scoring game. So, yeah, we'd love that again.
And a lot of chat as well about the former Netflix Vice President Eric Barmack potentially investing in Motherwell as well. So that's an interesting side story to that match as well. Just quickly, how do we see Aberdeen versus Dundee going? Dundee will be pleased maybe just to get away from Dens Park and know they've got a fixture that's going to be on. Thomas, do you have any inclinations on which way that match will go?
I think it'll be tight, Kenny. Dundee won 1-0 at Dens a few weeks ago. Their record at Pittodrie is pretty poor, but they drew 1-1 earlier in the season, and that's kind of changing in recent times, given Aberdeen have dropped off a cliff this season, and Dundee are improving. The only slight concern I have for Dundee is that they have really started leaking goals in the second half of the season. Only Livingston have conceded more. I think they've conceded 54 goals this season, Livingston 55. We saw last week the collapse to concede 3 late goals. So for all the good work that they're doing, Luke McCowan, Lyle Cameron, all these guys, Bakayoko up the top end of the pitch, the style of play, I think Tony Docherty will be concerned that they are conceding far too many. And Aberdeen have improved under Peter Leven, albeit not, it's not massive, but they're unbeaten in their last few games. They're kept a couple of clean sheets in there. They're looking a wee bit more solid, a wee bit more consistency. So I think it'll be really tight. And to be honest, I couldn't really call it either way. But Aberdeen don't score too many apart from Miovski. And as I say, Dundee, at the other end are a wee bit suspect. So it could easily be a draw, I think, which would obviously favour Motherwell or Hibs certainly if Hibs could get the win against Motherwell. So although Dundee do have that second opportunity as well against Rangers. But yeah, I expect it to be really tight.
OK, Thomas, thanks for your thoughts on that one. Now to a subject close to Cammy's heart, Kilmarnock. They have been motoring this season. 4th place at the moment, 5 points clear of 5th place St Mirren with 6 games to play. Kelly visit St Johnstone on Saturday. Cammy, surely a great chance for Kelly to consolidate further in 4th.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny, and it's almost the perfect weekend. I think if you'd flipped that fixture and it had been at home then in St Mirren being away to Celtic, it is almost the perfect weekend for Kilmarnock to take that opportunity if they can do that, and again putting them 8 points clear of 5th position going into the split would be an incredible turnaround for Derek McInnes and his side. He's been phenomenal since he's came to the club, Derek McInnes. I can't speak highly enough of him. Listen, we know how good a manager he is, but again, what he's done at the club, I think he's taken it season by season. They had that season they had to get up from the Championship, and then the transitional period where he had a number of players that were probably Championship players under his disposal, but he got a tune out of these guys and he made sure that they stayed in the league, and they've built on that this season, and I'm pretty sure he'll be looking to do that going forward. But yeah, what a run of form, what a squad they've put together, Kenny. That's the big thing for me, is the squad, the strength and depth. They've got Van Veen, they've got Greg Stewart, they've got Rory McKenzie, all sitting on the bench. These are guys that would be starting for a lot of Scottish Premier League teams. So yeah, it's been a brilliant season, and I'm pretty sure Derek McInnes will be pushing all the way to make sure they get that 4th spot.
Yeah, let's talk about some of that Kilmarnock squad then. I'm keen to get your thoughts, Thomas, because you commentate in quite a few games, and I'm sure over the course of the season you've had a good look at Kyle Vassell. And when you watch him play, he puts himself about. He looks quite intimidating, quite aggressive. I was at the Kilmarnock Ross County game on Saturday past, and he even got Jan Danda at Ross County flustered, and Jan Danda's like the calmest little guy I think I've ever seen. But after the game, interviewed Kyle Vassell, and I was expecting quite a kind of aggressive sort, but he's actually really personable. So you've got this kind of Jekyll and Hyde player. What do you make of Kyle Vassell?
Yeah, I think he's like a classic Derek McInnes striker, to be honest with you. Good presence, but can shift as well. He's not like really slow, leads the line so well, brings others into play, but crucially also carries a goal threat himself. And I think it was a big statement Derek McInnes made him captain in pre-season, and that just shows you what he thinks of him. And I think he was the difference last season between Kilmarnock staying up and going down when he came in for me. He got goals and assists in the second half of the season. So he's a fantastic player. Great Premiership level striker. The only obviously question mark is he fit for enough of the season? When you can get him fit, he does have issues with the hamstrings and all the rest of it. So if you can get him fit and on the pitch, he's, I think, pretty much loads of teams in the top flight, around Kilmarnock's level pushing up would take a guy like Kyle Vassell, because he is brilliant. He's got everything you would want as a player kind of outside the old firm to play up front for you in this league. So yeah, big player.
And another big player is Marley Watkins. Cammy, Kyle Vassell spoke about how he'd love Marley Watkins to stay on beyond the summer. His contract expires in the summer. Derek McInnes explained that his partner and his baby are down in the south coast of England, so it's a tough decision for Marley Watkins whether he stays or not. But that would be a great thing for going into next season if they know that Vassell and Watkins are going to be that solid front pairing again.
Oh yeah, that would be a brilliant signing if Derek McInnes can get Marley Watkins to sign again. I was at a dinner last weekend, Kenny, and I was speaking to a few of the guys at Kilmarnock, and they were saying that Marley Watkins, again, the way that Derek McInnes manages him, he gives him extra days off to get down to see his family. So that just shows you the level of management that Derek McInnes has got with his players. He's so personal with them, and he tailors their training to what they need and to get the best out of them on a Saturday. And I think, I think that relationship between Marley and Derek, hopefully Marley will see it as a positive, and he'll sign another contract, because he's been so good for Kelly this season, scored important goals. And with them two up front, the defence always know they're in for a real game because they're an absolute handful. You've got the two wingers on either side of Danny Armstrong, Matty Kennedy. It's a phenomenal front four, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, interesting to see how Kelly got on up at St Johnstone on Saturday. 2 quick questions, one each just before we wrap up. Thomas, you first. We've not touched on Hearts against Livingston. Just quickly, any hope for Livingston at all at avoiding that bottom spot?
No.
That's sufficient.
Let's give them some hope. To be fair, if they can go to Tynecastle and win, which is a big if, with County playing Rangers on Sunday, that gets it back to 6 points, you would imagine. Don't want to write County off too much because they've been good at home, but gets it back to 6 points, and that puts the pressure on slightly. So, and then at that point, you never know going into the split when teams are playing each other. So there's some hope, but I don't think anyone really holds out much hope that they're going to stay up. But there's a wee bit of a slender ray of light for them.
He says what he thinks, does Thomas Duncan? That's what we love about him. Cammy Bell, the other thing I wanted to ask you is Morton Dundee United. Dundee United, another one of your former clubs, tonight on the BBC Scotland channel, Friday Night Football. Louis Moult in good form, Player of the Month, some brilliant goals as well. But George Oakley's back in the Morton side. He scored a hat-trick against them not so long ago. How do you see tonight going?
Yeah, listen, it's going to be a really good tussle between the two of them. Two good teams. Dundee United, again, they're so close to getting that title over the line. And again, the defeat for Raith midweek will give them a little kick as well. So, yeah, it's another opportunity to make that gap bigger this weekend before Raith play Partick Thistle tomorrow. So, yeah, it's a big game for United, and one that I'm pretty sure Jim Goodwin will make sure the players are up for it. But as you say, George Oakley back, he's a real handful and a good championship player, so it's going to be a tough tie for them.
Okay, Cammy, thanks very much. I can see you need a coffee refill now, so that's all we've got time for today on the Scottish Football Podcast. Thanks for joining me, Kenny Crawford, and thanks to Cammy Bell and Thomas Duncan for their significant contributions. We appreciate you listening. Remember, Morton against Dundee United is on the BBC Scotland channel tonight, a 7:45 kickoff, and Sports Sound will have all Saturday's action covered. Enjoy your Friday.
The Scotland Rugby Podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby Podcast.
It's just seismic stuff.
There's bucket hats as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. Is this a rugby podcast or is this a fashion podcast?
Why can't it be a bit of both?
Rugby. Let's get on to rugby. There's a lot to be excited about. Today's guest, John McGuigan.
Clubs are an absolute bedrock of everything Scottish rugby's about.
The Rugby Sports Sound Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
You cannot help but be so excited. It's going to be the centre of the rugby universe.
BBC Sounds.